Hello and welcome to this week's IG Live. I'm so excited to be talking to this week's guest. We're going to be talking to Gia Gordon about her new book, The Redemption of Daya, Keane. And I'm very excited because it's such a good book. I just finished reading it and it's a really gut-wrenching read, but so worth it. It's a YA book that centers, hello there, you found it. It centers a queer love story, but it's also about identity and when it's safe to, and who you can express that around, what to do when you're in an environment that is not very safe. And so we're going to be talking all about that. Hello.
Hi. Oh, okay. Hi. Let me get in the.
Oh, I know. Yes, when the screen gets split, it
Yeah.
shifts a little. So good to see you. Thank you for being on here today.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, I was just saying, I finished the book a couple days ago, and it is so good. So I'm glad to get to talk about it because I feel like I need to talk to somebody about the book. It is so good. There's so much that's in it that sometimes it's kind of hard to narrow down what I want to focus on, because I think you bring up so many issues that I really encourage everybody to read it. It's a really great book. But why don't we go ahead and start off with, you can introduce yourself and tell us what your journey was to becoming an author.
Well, my name is Gia Gordon, and I am a newly minted Illinois-based author. And let's see, my journey to becoming an author. So I was always a writer, you know, even when I was a little itty bitty. I used to make these anti-war fashion magazines when I was little. And I went from that to writing really bad poetry, you know, how a lot of young people do, and taught myself how to play the guitar. My writing transitioned from really bad poetry to really bad songwriting. And then I did that until my adulthood. And, you know, it's weird. I had a dream one night, and it really stuck with me the next day. And I thought, wow, I really should write this down, because like this is like hanging out there, you know, in the ether. It's not leaving me. You know how sometimes your dreams will wisp away shortly after you wake up. And in the writing down of this dream, I kept adding pieces to it, and pretty soon it was a fairly long document for a dream. So I thought, oh, you know, maybe I need to run with this. And so that ended up being the first novel I ever wrote in my adulthood. It was awful, and it will never be anything, and I will not tell you anything about it. But
You
that
can't
was
do that. That's so you can't tantalize us with that.
it was awful. I'll just say that it was really awful. But that was the thing that kind of led me into thinking, hey, you know, let's take that love of writing that I've had my entire life and see where we can go with it.
I love that. And did you always know that you were going to do YA books? I mean, did you
No,
that?
no, no, that was never even a thought until that dream story that I wrote down, and the people that the dream was about were teenagers. And once I started writing that and tapping into that emotional landscape of being an adolescent, I thought, oh, you know, I have a lot of stuff in here that I probably haven't processed yet. I think I need to stay in that space for a little while and see what we can do.
Well, tell us about your new book. Am I saying her name right? Daya Keane?
Daya, yeah.
The Redemption of Daya Keane. What was the inspiration behind this book?
You know, so The Redemption of Daya Keane, just briefly, it's a queer teenager who crushes on the purity princess from their very small, very conservative Arizona town, dominated by a local megachurch. That's kind of like the short synopsis of it. Um, I had written a number of iterations of Daya's story, right? And they just never went anywhere. Like I just couldn't get traction with those other iterations of it. And at a certain point, I just thought, wow, I think there's room to go deeper and broader with her journey. And when I went deeper, when I like got into a thought process of going deeper and wider with her journey, I realized that I had some experience in my youth. I was raised with a very conservative, um, I mean, very conservative Foursquare Baptist stepfather, who was very oppressive in his, he would dominate us in our home with the dogma of his belief system. So I was involved in the church as a teenager. I went to something like the peer prom when I was a senior in high school.
So that's a real thing.
It's a totally real thing, yeah. And it was a lock-in. It wasn't overnight. I did not escape. I stayed there all night, and it was really fun. And so I remembered, like, I dropped down into that experience of having that relationship within my church youth group, of how comforting it was in a lot of ways, and how beautiful it was, and just that feeling of family and camaraderie. There was just something to it, but there was also that messaging in the background that spoke directly to who I always thought of myself as, in a very deep secret place, because all that messaging I had gotten through my childhood with my stepfather drove me all the way inward.
I thought that was something that you brought out so beautifully in the book, is this pressure that Daya feels, that queer youth feel from people who want to fix them, but how confused it is, quote unquote, fix them.
Yeah.
But how confusing it is, because it's often mixed up with messages of love and acceptance and inclusion, but there's always that second part to that message, only if you are, following how you're supposed to be.
Right.
And it would seem like that would be so confusing, because like you said, there's at the same time these very warm experiences mixed in with these messages. So how does Daya deal with that pressure?
I mean, she really does get that pressure from all around her. It's there in her peers and her classmates. It's there with her cousins and her aunt, who the aunt is probably responsible for driving the mother in that direction. So Daya definitely gets that from Joanna, her mother, wanting to have Daya be part of that religious experience that she's having. But there being, the conflict of the messaging. Daya does go to church with her mom that one Sunday, and the messaging, especially about, homophobia, it feels like subtext, but it's loud and clear to Daya what that really means. And honestly, Daya has to come to a place where, she really wishes she could let it roll off of her the way that Stella does, or that she could disassociate from it the way B-Rad seems to with a lot of things. But the truth of the matter is, when she comes to that fight or flight moment with her mother, she really just has to confront it, and it, it's earth-shattering for her.
Yeah, like I was saying, this is such a gut-wrenching read. I think I read it differently now as an adult than I'm sure I would have as a 17-year-old.
Yeah.
I just think there are very few, so many of the adults really fail the kids in this book, except for, I don't want to do too many spoilers, but there are some at the end that really come through. But for most of the book, they're just, the adults are really making life so difficult for the kids. But one of the things I love about is the setting, how you paint this picture of this town. And even as you point out at the beginning, or Daya points out that she lives in town Escondido, which means hidden, and yet nothing is hidden in the town. I mean, I think queer youth feel this kind of pressure in all settings, but being in that little, almost like a pressure cooker kind of a town, what kind of picture are you painting of what it's like for kids to grow up in a town like that when you don't fit in to kind of what the picture of what you're supposed to be?
There's a moment where Daya reflects on what her experience is on the day-to-day basis, right? Like a kid like Beckett, the young woman that she crushes on, impossible crush. And it is a slow, sizzling burn, right? So we have that living in the worst possible place to have a crush like that on a person like that. And she reflects on how Beckett can just go about her life and have fun at something called peer prom. But for a queer kid in an environment like that, it really is like, you have to lift the curtain hems and check and make sure that nobody's, coming after you metaphorically or literally. You would constantly look over your shoulder. There's no like moment or detail that you wouldn't miss, because your existence is about self-protection.
Right.
and making sure that you come through that to whatever comes next in your life, that you go through that unscathed. And so Daya really does live in that feeling, in that existence all the time.
Yeah, it struck me, it's almost like she has, I'm sure she had to develop a sixth sense of what people mean, because a lot of times there's so much hypocrisy,
Mm-hmm.
and, you know, that she almost has developed this amazing ability
Mm-hmm.
to read between the lines to what everybody says, even a lot of times with her best friends, you know, that
Yeah.
just emotionally, and it seems like that just complicates things so much when she's trying to. It didn't seem like she was struggling so much to know who she was, but more
Mm-hmm.
when it's safe to show who she is. And the fact
Absolutely.
that everybody else, you know, she was always getting mixed messages or hidden messages. How does that make it more complicated when you're trying to figure out, is this safe, is this person safe?
Oh, yeah. Daya's mom. Okay, so I attribute a lot of this to Daya's mother, because Daya's mother, historically, like since Daya was a very young child, you know, Daya's mother has a lot of issues that she has not resolved in herself. A lot of those come from the breakup of her marriage from Daya's father, and from horrible things that happened as she was, as the divorce was happening, and she was sort of being excommunicated a little bit from the church that she went to at that time. And because of that toxic relationship or environment that Daya grew up with, the mom is not a reliable narrator, and Daya doesn't know when when she's safe to say something, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I grew up with a mother like this, so I really can identify with Daya on this point, that when you're not sure that you're saying the right thing, or you're not sure that the thing that you're saying is going to be a trigger for somebody,
Mm-hmm.
you do second guess everything people say to you. You do wonder, well, do they mean that? Or do I need to interpret, you know, what the underlying emotion of that is?
Right.
And so, yeah, that becomes really, really complicated for Daya, trying to figure out where am I safe to land and just kind of be myself. And again, without, you know, doing any spoilers, for some people that unfortunately doesn't happen. That idea that I can be safe to be who I am in this world, fully, like fully, a fully actualized person. Some people get that, and they have the luxury of being able to do that if they're emotionally, physically, and spiritually safe. That's usually when we feel safe to be authentically ourselves.
Right.
Some people never get that, and some people, you know, do get the beauty of that.
And I know that's one theme of the book is about found family. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I think Daya is very mature in how she views her mom, and I think is actually able to identify a lot of why her mom is the way she is. Not that
Mm-hmm.
that makes it easier for her to deal with her, but she does, I think, is pretty mature about how she can kind of have that perspective. But one of the great things about the book is her found
Mm-hmm.
family. And like I said, I don't want to give too much away with the spoilers, but why was that important to kind of put that in there, to kind of emphasize that sometimes the people that you're able to be safe around are not necessarily the one, your biological
You
family?
know, I gave that directly to Daya from my lived experience. Found family has always been very important to me. It continues to be very important to me, and it turns out I write a lot about that in pretty much everything that I write. So yeah, I think it's extremely important that it was extremely important for me to have given Daya a support system in that way. When you are not supported at home and you do not have support in your community, oftentimes you have to make your own community and your own support system.
Mm,
And I really, really wanted Daya to have that. You know, she is surrounded by people who are quirky and flawed and really deeply messy, but beautiful and loyal and faithful to her. And, you know, we should all have that.
yeah. I have to say the characters in this book are so well written, because they're they're I can just picture them. They seem like somebody you would meet. Like you said, they're very flawed in a
Yeah.
lot of ways, and yet they show up for her. They're there for her when she needs them. Then Stella and B Rad, I love his name. That he's those I've read, his name's Brad, but
Yeah.
he rebranded himself.
Yes.
Um, they're such great characters, and like you said, they really provide that support system for her. Why is this book so important? I mean, I think it would be important anytime it came out, but it seems especially in the environment we're in today. Why is this
Yeah.
so important for teens to have access to a book like this?
You know, we are in a tricky time right now, and it's especially tricky for LGBTQIA plus youth, where they are seeing in real time that their existence is being challenged in a lot of ways. And this book and books like The Redemption of Daya Keane, those books are so important because they will both affirm or normalize queer existence, right? So if you come to this book as a queer reader, then this is an affirmation of who you are, that you are worthy and valuable, and that your existence matters, and that you just need to find your place to be with the people that will support you, and you should be okay. But if you're not a queer youth and you come to this book, what happens is it will normalize people around you that are not like you. And that is very frightening to certain segments of the population, the larger population. And for that reason alone, these books are so important. When we affirm and normalize the existence of anyone from any group, that is truly life-saving, and to not do so leads to erasure. Right. And that erasure of the existence of any marginalized group of people is dangerous.
And I have to say, I love that the characters, like we've talked about, they're so fully fleshed out. They're not flat, stereotypical characters. And also for a queer kid reading this, they can see different ways. You know, it's not like there's one queer character that's in there. There's a number, and they are in, you know, exhibited in different ways, deal with the pressures in different ways, which I think is so beautiful. But I also wanted to give you time to talk about your other projects that you have coming out. I think I saw you had a middle grade book that's going to be coming out. Do you want to tell us about that?
I do. I have a middle grade novel. My debut middle grade comes out November 12th through Farrar, Straus and Giroux, and it's about a 12-year-old girl who's been in foster care most of her life. And her first week of middle school, her social studies teacher assigns the class a family tree project. And that book is called My So-Called Family. And again, that comes out in November. And then just earlier this year, I sold a book, another middle grade, also to Farrar, Straus and Giroux. And that one is called Strays. And it's about a young girl who witnesses a dog being dumped onto the road from, you know, like a creepy white van, kind of dumps this dog on the street, which is very common in the town where she lives. And she is desperate to rescue him. But her dad is the town animal control officer. Wow. And so she has to do it in secret and away from his eyes. He runs a high kill shelter, and she's terrified that if her dad gets a hold of this puppy, that will be the end of him and probably the end of her. And so it's just a way in which, you know, in so many ways, we are all strays in our life if we've dealt with traumatic events or hardships, and about what kind of common thread pulls, you know, people together and back into relationship.
Oh, I can't wait for that. And what age group is that one going to be?
It's also middle grade.
Middle grade. Okay.
Yeah.
How was it, the experience of doing, going from YA to middle grade? Was it hard to kind of adjust to that, or was that a fun transition?
It was surprisingly not that hard, although my writing is so different when I'm approaching a middle grade story than a young adult story. Because I taught high school for 30 years, when I write young adult, I write exactly the way my students spoke. I don't filter or censor in any way, shape, or form. You know, you have not more room to be more detailed, but you have a lot more liberty with how much space you take with your story. And in middle grade, because the story needs to be a little more condensed, the economy of words is much more important for me as a writer anyway. And so I'm able to condense a lot of ideas and information and sensory detail into many, many fewer words. And I thought that would be hard, but actually it feels very natural and organic.
Really? Yeah. Oh, that's well, and then that also answers something I had been thinking about when I was reading this book, is the voices of the characters come through so clearly, and they seem so authentic. So that makes sense that you're drawing on your experience as a teacher, because just the language that they use, it sounds very real. I have kids that are a little bit younger, but yet it still just sounds very true to how kids speak. So I love that you capture that so well.
Yeah, I'm not going to say that I wouldn't from time to time write something on my hand or on a post-it note and stick it in my pocket
Oh,
during
that's good.
class.
Yeah.
Oh, I did. Oh, yeah. I cribbed off their lives shamelessly, actually. Nothing that would identify anyone in particular,
Right.
but just,
Right.
yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
What a great resource. Well, I do want to, we're coming up on time, but I wanted to give you time to talk about Never Count It
Oh,
Out,
yeah.
which I know is the nonprofit that you're the co-founder of, provides books to classrooms and community programs. Could you just tell us briefly about that? Because it's so wonderful.
Right. So we've been running Never Count It Out for, I want to say probably about 10 years,
Mm.
roughly, give or take. And we, our whole goal and the thing that brings us the most joy is putting books in the hands of young readers, especially in places where they don't have ready access to books, and creative mentorship as well. We also work in that way. So we'll come in and do writing events, or, writing workshops, or something to that effect, with groups and schools and classrooms. And we do that at no cost to their programs. That's something that we do as part of our nonprofit. Even back a couple years ago, when the tragedy at Robb Elementary in Uvalde,
Right.
when that happened, we organized. Our thought was to pull together 600 books that we can give a book to each child at that school after that tragic event. And so we put the all call out to our writing community, and the 600 books came on the first day. And by the time it was all said and done, we collected somewhere in the neighborhood of 14,000 books from people just like yourself, from authors who would, in many cases, sent boxes of books and signed all of them. Some individual people who just bought a book through their local independent bookstore, dropped a little note in there for the kids, of hope and of, just comfort, and would mail them to us.
Mm.
Some publishers mailed us entire boxes of books. So at the end of the day, we were able to give 14,000 books. That's a book for every school-age child, pre-K through high school, every child in Uvalde, Texas.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, I mean, I love the response that you got, but I love that you organized it so quickly to get the books to them. I'm sure that had a major impact.
We really believe, like our mission at Never Count It Out is that we read to know we're not alone, and that every child deserves to see themselves in a story. And so many people were really sensitive to what like topic of a book to send.
Mm.
So that might be something that really brought them hope and encouragement to go in going forward. And so that was really beautiful.
Well, thank you for taking the time to talk with us today. It was such a pleasure. Like I said, I've really been looking
Oh,
forward to talking with you ever
me
since
too.
the book. So thank you for taking the time. Anybody that's joining us late, this will be up in just a few minutes on Instagram, and later we'll have it on our YouTube channel. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. I so appreciate it.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.